Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Storm. I'm your host, Selena. Today, I have a very special guest with me, and I know I say that because every guest story is special to me, but today truly is special. Jolene Carter is joining us today. Jolene has become a quick friend to me, and I'm very honored to sit down here with her and share this story. Jolene's story is a story that any of us could have found ourselves in. It is a heart-wrenching story, and I am so honored to have her sit here with us and share her story. And this is going to be a tough one because Jolene is very, very intentional with her words, but she's also living a mother's worst nightmare. So today, when we sit down with her, I am very cautious of how we interview her, and we are just honored to have her here today. Jolene, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'm excited to sit down with you, but it's like sitting down with a friend, to be honest with you.
Yes.
And I'm honored that you have chosen to share your story with me. And I'm very honored to be able to take that to my podcast. And it came when you were ready. That was the biggest thing for me, is to make sure that I didn't come to you and say, hey, let's sit down on my podcast. You waited and you came to me, and I'm very honored that you trust me with your story.
Yeah. When I met you, when you meet another mother that's lost a child, it is just like an instant bond. But because of the substance abuse issue, it's the extra bond. It is like, it is different.
You're right, it is.
Substance use loss is in another class, in my opinion, because of the layers that has come before the death and what
Yeah.
you see your child go through. And I belong to a lot of clubs and meetings and stuff, and the ones, I have a group called Faith Group, and it's mothers, and all of them have lost a child. And of course, there's a variety of reasons,
Yeah.
you know, um, and I still have felt, very comfortable in this group, but, there is still a stigma,
Your
and that
loss is different.
my loss is different, and it is, I have learned that it is my passion to remove stigma from addiction. And so that's what drives me now. I mean, anything that I can do that will reduce stigma, anybody that I can talk to. And surprisingly, it's a lot of people that
Yeah.
still, even in groups where they've lost children, it's still like, I'll be around people and they'll talk about, a death or something, and they'll say, "Oh, but it wasn't drugs."
Yeah.
And
Like
then
drugs are
my
dirty.
my my antenna goes up, and I'm like, I want to talk about this.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, you know, what do you know about addiction? You know, um, because
Yeah. I'm uncomfortable even hearing that you've had to experience that. I'll be honest with you.
yeah, I mean it. I mean, when I get uncomfortable about the subject of people that don't understand, I either, just kind of sink down, or I work it out in my head where, when am I going to say something about this? When am I going to? Because if I don't, who will?
That's exactly what I was getting ready to ask you. Do you feel obligated? Do you feel like it is your place? Because I do. When I find I'm in a situation where people are talking about, oh, but it's not drugs. It wasn't drugs. And I always say, so does my son's death mean less because it wasn't cancer or a car accident or, another tragedy? My son's death, or his life and his death, was less valuable. And I then see that as an opportunity to educate and
Mhm.
explain. I want to remind you that the families that lose their children due to addiction, we don't get casseroles brought to our home.
Right.
we don't get people checking up on us.
Yes.
It's like we deserve this for some reason. And it is an isolating scenario to begin with, but now you've also isolated us with our grief.
Well, I have to, I have many friends that have lost a child, and those are the people that when I am going through a trigger time or whatever, I can reach out to because they understand the concept of losing your child. And I don't want to, but, and I usually might even say to them, I felt, I still felt the stigma.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's where my, I get that passion to say, let's talk about addiction, and because addiction is not a character flaw. It's like
Correct.
they think, well, when people immediately look at someone on the street, they think loser, or why don't they just go get a job? Or I look at every person, on the road asking for money, or carrying everything on their back. I am just, the empathy that I have for people, that it's so many layers to be able to get these people back on their feet, and people just write them off. And you have to think about, this is a disease. It isn't a chosen disease.
And everyone that we cross that has that struggle, they are more than their struggle. And we forget that. We forget that they are a human being behind that struggle.
Yeah.
And when I see somebody in that situation, I always wonder to myself, now that I have more knowledge, have lived experience, what traumas they must have seen
Yes.
to be where they're at.
Because, I know who my son was before the addiction started.
Mm-hmm.
I know who my son was, and he was absolutely the most. I told him all the time, you can be anything you want. I mean, I literally thought he could be the president.
Yeah.
I mean, or, I just thought he had the capacity because of what God had given him. He gave him such, well, he was gifted, so he was very smart. He didn't use it, but he had it.
Mm-hmm.
He was very good looking. He was funny. He just was fun to be around. He was so non-judgmental. I mean, he could get along with anybody. And, he just was, and his humor would really, be the life of the party. And he was very popular. He liked to dress well. He liked to have his hair just so. And he had no problem with, he always had the most good looking girlfriends. And he treated them like, I was like, I never had a boyfriend like
Right.
that.
Like where did you learn to be
Yes,
that way with
he was
women?
so
So he
good.
was a ladies' man.
And he was very good to me. We were very
That's
close
awesome.
because his dad was working, all the time. So it was me and Colin, and I just, we had to give up some financial for me to go from full time to just part time, but to me it was worth it. And
Yeah.
Colin was a delight. He loved soccer. He was good at it. It was very important to him. His friends were very important to him.
Soccer seemed to be something that was really the main focus of his life from what you've shared with me.
He went from, when he was a little kid, he went, the recreational league, and then he started competitive, and, he tried out, for his high school. He went to school in Lee Summit, and very competitive. And he made the junior varsity as a freshman. And so, I mean, all that work paid out. And he just was so fun. And so when the tables turned and I knew that he actually came to me. He came to me in the middle of the night and woke me up, which he did. I left my door open. He came in.
How old was he?
Um, he was a junior in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I might get, dates and events in the wrong order, but the way I remember it is he woke me up to tell me that he needed help. And I go, well, what do you mean help? That's how naive I was. I was like, what do you mean help? Now, I knew he was smoking weed and he didn't have my permission, but
You have to pick your battles.
you do. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just kind of didn't, allow it in the house, but I
You didn't
knew.
condone it, but you were aware of it.
I was aware of it. Yeah. I was the stupid mom that said, what's that smell in your room?
I'm sorry we're laughing about that because don't we wish that that was the only problem we
Yeah.
had?
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right?
So he woke me up and said, Mom, I need help. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he explained that he was doing more than just the smoking of the weed. And so um, I didn't know anything about how to help him, where to go, just Googling and, calling and finding out, because he was a minor and, who had an open, so just getting introduced to that world of finding a place for him. And so I did.
And I always share with parents that we don't get a manual
Yeah.
on how to manage this.
No.
They don't send these babies home with us from the hospital and said, okay, when they hit to be teenagers, you're going to have to deal with drugs and alcohol, and here's the next manual. We don't get that.
Right.
And we don't, and it's still such a taboo subject, even though it is destroying our families. It's still such a taboo subject that you don't know who to trust to even make those phone calls. Which one of your friends do you share with? Because the judgment comes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And at this time, Colin and I's, his dad and I divorced. So it wasn't a huge difference, honestly, because he was always with me, but now he was gone every other weekend. But so I was, trying to make these arrangements and found a place. I mean, I didn't know if it was a good one or not. I just didn't know. So he went to a 30-day one, had to explain it to the school, that
Mm-hmm.
he was going to be absent. Um, so, that was like,
That was going to be a challenge for
yeah,
him
I
as
was like,
well.
oh no, I have, and then what are they, what are they going to think about him, and
Mm-hmm.
so he went and um, Colin is very smart. He knows what to say, you know, and we would go to parents counseling, and um, he, I forgot what I was going to say. He knew what to tell the counselors and everything. And he would say that he was, annoyed that there were kids in there that were required to be there by law. And he was there because he wanted help. And so I was like, well, that's kind of a good problem, that he's a little annoyed because,
Right.
all they do when they're there because they don't want to be is talk about what they're going to do when they get out of there.
Right.
So I felt good that he was there for the right reason. So he got out, went back to school, did all right. And then before his senior year, he decided to stop playing soccer. Um, there was several reasons, that he didn't really talk about it. But I think, it's much more competitive because he would have to be on the varsity. He couldn't be on junior varsity as a senior, I believe. So I think the drug use was getting, involved so that it made it harder. So obviously he did go back to using drugs
Mm-hmm.
after his first rehab. Um, but
And what kind of drugs do you feel like he was using at that point?
I believe that he was smoking heroin. Because I would see the tin foil with black on it. Um, so
Well, I'm going to back you up here just for a second because I know there's going to be a lot of questions. Where do you think he was introduced to that?
I have no idea. It's so prevalent, so easy to get that, you know,
Do you think it was meeting new people in rehab, or do you think it was social environments through contacts at school? No idea.
probably contacts at school. Probably contacts at school.
Okay.
Um, he was in a group of friends that were very tight. Um, and they all, smoked weed, but I don't know that they did the things that Colin did. And Colin is, not a follower. He does what he wants. It's nobody's fault. It's not any of his friends' fault. And I don't think his friends liked him doing that. But I think excuse me, that I'm going to go back. That's why he came to me in the middle of the night and said he wanted help because his friends were upset with him for doing that. So he wanted to get right with his friends.
Well,
That made him. That was I didn't do that in the right order. So
I think that's great that his friends still had that kind of influence on him.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, and so in fact, one of his friends wouldn't talk to him, and I remember going to his mother's house and saying, you know, Colin really misses Tanner. Um, but she said he wasn't living with her; he was living with his girlfriend at the time. So anyway, I was so brokenhearted for Colin because his friends were pulling away from him. In particular, that I was aware of was Tanner, and you'll learn more about Tanner in a moment. But so that's what drove him to go to rehab. Senior year, he is back, I assume, doing drugs. He decides to stop soccer, so he's going to stop his competitive and his school soccer. And the last summer, the summer before his senior year, his club team went to a international soccer tournament in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and so, we both knew it was his last time playing soccer, and it was very emotional for both me because I'd grown up to be a soccer mom,
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have to be there. I wanted to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed every moment and waited till they put him in. And I'm like, oh, good. My son said, oh, good. Go, Colin, go. And
Yeah.
so, you know, knowing this was the last time I was going to see him play, it was emotional because I loved it. It was in it.
Yeah.
And so after their first game, the goalie got injured. And at the end of the game, they do their huddle, and the coach says, "Will anybody volunteer to be the coach or the goalie?" And I mean, this is an international tournament, and they don't have a backup goalie because I can't remember. There was a reason, but we didn't have one. And of course, that's a huge,
Yeah.
you got all those balls, coming at you, and who volunteers? My son. It's his last it's his last hurrah. And he is a wing. So he's used to being in the middle. He's used to being wide. In fact, the last time he was a goalie was when he was um, in rec. And he was so upset that he missed a shootout that he stopped being a goalie because he felt responsible for the loss.
Because he let his team down.
Yeah. So he hasn't been a goalie since he was,
But he's
6
going
or
to take
7
this last opportunity to play
for his team.
and step in for that position. Wow.
I was upset but proud.
Right?
I was like, that's who he is.
Right?
That's who he is. He would give anybody anything. So
Yeah, coach, I got this.
I just
Yeah.
I was just so proud of him. But he was scared, and I was scared for him, But he went out there and he played, and they lost.
Doggone it.
But, and so when the end of the game came and it was time to leave the pitch, you know, I watched him and he just lingered and lingered and lingered. And it, it was obvious that he knew this was, and it was just
He
very
was saying
emotional.
goodbye to a friend.
Yeah, I mean, this
Yeah.
was his life, and so I was just so proud of him, and I knew he didn't just like, "Oh, my last game," he knew,
It
and
was
so
intentional.
yeah.
Yeah.
So senior year comes around, and it's February 1st is the day that changed a lot of people's lives forever. February 1st of 2020, um, my son was in a car accident. He was driving on a 2-lane road in Lee Summit, very close between our house and another friend's house. I was at work. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And Colin was driving with, I didn't know at the time, but he had friends in the car. And he decided to try to pass a car. It was a double line. He had driven this road a million times, and so have I. Unfortunately, when he tried to pass, he did see another car in that dip where it comes over the hill. So he tried to retreat and go back, and he tried to get back in his place, and he overcorrected, and he did come across that center line. And that car that was coming did strike the car and pulled Colin's car all the way into the ditch of the other side. Um, I I didn't find out until I came home, and a little business card from the police department fell, and I picked it up, and it said "Call without haste." And I'm like, well, what? What could this be? What did he do? I just so I called, and I was backing up because I was actually supposed to be at a meeting. And he told me that Colin had been in an accident and that I needed to get to research as soon as possible.
Research Hospital in Kansas City.
Yes, Kansas City, Missouri. Yes. That was the trauma. That's where the trauma people go. That's where they specialize in trauma. And so I totally panicked. I started driving and didn't remember how to get to research. I was like, I got to get there, but I was lost, and I was calling people and they were telling me how to get there. And I was just like, no, that, I don't know where that is. And, just completely, felt like this is, I got to get there as soon as possible, but I'm lost. And so when I got to research, they said he was with the chaplain. And I was like, oh no. And
Yeah, that's a tough one for a mother to hear.
yeah, I didn't know anything. And so they let me see Colin. He was on the gurney. He was getting ready to have surgery. And so I asked him some questions, and he didn't know. He didn't know what happened or anything. I said, he didn't know who was in the car. He didn't know if he was alone or not. He didn't know anything. So then right behind me was his dad and his stepmom. And I stepped away, and they talked. And then Brian, his father, as they were taking Colin into surgery, said, "Do you know about the other boys?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Both of them died." And that is when my life changed forever, and so did a lot of people's. And so I fainted. They got me in a wheelchair, and I went up to the intensive care waiting room, and it was full of people, of kids, of classmates. Um,
That had to be hard to see that.
I mean, everybody, every girlfriend he ever had. Sometimes some of them were with their parents because Colin was so friendly that everybody's parents loved him. I mean, he was a great kid. So I know that when addiction takes over, you know who they are before that addiction starts. So they're not the people that you think they are. I mean, they are everywhere, and those people, you know, are people as well as addicts. And so um, when another mother was there and she said, "Do you know who was in the car with him?" And I said, "No, I don't." And she said, "Do you want to know?" And I'm like, I mean, what choice do
That's
I
a
have?
tough
I mean, of
question,
course I want to know, but no,
especially if they knew.
I mean, these are friends. These are not
Yeah.
just, you know, I mean, these are his core group of, they call themselves the bros.
Well, first, I want to say before you go any further, I think any of us listening, putting ourselves in your shoes in that moment, I don't think any of us would have been able to be prepared. And to have anybody, approach us and ask us, "Do you want to know who was in the car?" I mean, let's give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Nobody has ever been prepared to be in that environment, in that scenario. So I'm just sitting here going, you're sitting in a mother's worst nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know that whoever was in the car is gone. And I know that my son is in surgery, and I don't know, honestly, I didn't even know what he was in surgery for. Um, so he, I looked around kind of to see who was missing. Um, and so she told me who they were. And again, these are kids I know. These are not,
Kids
you
that have
know,
been to your home.
yes. And so I literally just at that moment felt like a zombie, like no longer my soul was in my body.
Oh, I don't think you can. Yeah, I
I
don't.
mean,
You're.
I just literally couldn't handle it. And
You couldn't process it.
I just, I think I fell to my knees. Um, I'm pretty sure things start to get fuzzy for me at this point for quite a while. They got a doctor involved to give me something to calm me down. So the next thing I remember is the surgeon coming in, and he said, you know, this is, an 18-year-old boy that had a blood clot in his aorta and able to save the time to get a stent in his heart, which is normally fatal. And the surgeon kind of indicated that, this is not usual. This is, an 18-year-old usually doesn't get a blood clot right in the place where there's a tear that can kill you.
Wow.
And so I'm I am a very strong believer, and I felt like it was God saving Colin. He'd already saved him several times before that. Colin fell off of a ski lift in Keystone, was life flighted to Denver. He's just been in quite a few areas where I just felt God's hand, and God's hand was, you're not done. So through that time, he was on life support. Um, we had to go through those two boys' funerals. Um, I can't express how you feel. You feel guilty. You feel guilty that I'm going to these boys' funerals, but my boy is on life support, and I can't even worry about my son because I'm so heartbroken about these two boys and what their parents are going through. And so, I mean, I'm on life support. I'm waiting in line for the reception for the boys, and I just felt like the laser beam eyes were on me, whether they really were or not. But they're like, this lady's standing in line, and it was just heartbreaking. But the parents, the parents were not like that. They were very kind, and they loved Colin.
Wow.
And um, the most incredible thing happened, not at the funerals, but it was before the funeral. Just within a few days of the accident, I was in intensive care waiting room. And Nathan was one of the boys. Nathan and Tanner were the two boys that did not make it through the car accident. And Tanner's mom, Lynn, and her husband came in while I was in the waiting room. And I was talking with some other people, and I saw them walk through the door. And I was like,
That had
oh,
to be emotional.
oh. I mean, I just wanted to just fall into a puddle. I was just like, and they came over, and I hugged her, and I just said, Lynn, oh, I'm so sorry, and I'll never forget the words she said to me. She said, Jolene, she said, don't be sorry. We can't control who God saves. And God saved Colin. And we're going to stand behind him, and we're going to rally behind him. And every time I say that story, the hair comes up on my arms because, I mean,
I'm sure those were the last words you expected to hear.
yeah, I mean, the level of faith that you have to say that within just a few days of losing your son to me. It was just, I was
Unbelievable grace.
unbelievable grace. And she loved Colin, and they all loved Colin. I mean, Colin was a great kid with an addiction. But at the time of the accident, sometimes I miss the steps, but at the time of the accident, Colin had asked for help again for the second time to me before the accident. And so he was going to counseling and to a psychiatrist to be put on Suboxone. So the reason I say that is because the day of the accident, he was on Suboxone. So that was important to tell the people at the hospital for pain relief because, he
Yeah, because
wouldn't be able to
Suboxone is
blocks.
is a block
Hmm.
for it's an
Opiates.
antagonistic that will block the receptors that would receive the medication and create so it blocks, it's a barrier that blocks the pain medication.
Yes. So going back to Lynn in the waiting room, I mean, I just was in awe of her. Um, and then his dad and I said to each other, we rotated being with him in his room because he was unconscious, and we both said, as soon as those tubes come out of his mouth and he starts to talk, we both need to be here.
Yeah.
We can't try to handle how he comes out of this and tell him what's happened. So um, I was with him when they had removed the tubes, and he said, and he saw me and he goes, what's going on? I said, just a minute. I went out and called his dad because his dad just left. So he came back. So his dad said, I hear you want to know what happened. And Colin said, yeah, what's going on? He goes, well, you were in a car accident. And he goes, okay. And
I
he,
want people to hear this, so speak up just a little bit.
okay, so his dad asked him, I hear you want to know what happened. And Colin said, yes, I do. And his dad told him he was in a car accident. And he said, was I alone? And his dad said, no. And he said, are they okay? And his dad said, no. So Colin started naming names of the friends that who could have been in the car with him. And so when he found out who had died and who was with him, I knew that Colin would not recover. And I didn't mean physically, I meant emotionally. He would never be able to accept what had happened, because he was a very sensitive, guy. He was, and very kind-hearted, and he loved his friends with everything that he had. And he would, and when he found out, I just knew it wasn't going to be, he wasn't going to survive this. So because of the accident, as soon as he was released from the hospital, his dad had already hired a defense attorney. We were expecting some charges to come. So they did. He was charged with 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 for the boys that had not made it, and then for the other driver. Although he wasn't injured, I'm sure he was emotionally injured. So we had to prepare for that case. Colin also had to finish high school. He wasn't going back because of his injuries. So I was like, how can he even think of studying? How can he even?
You're facing a criminal charge that very few adults ever face, but you're expected then also to be a high school senior.
Yeah.
That's
That's
an impossible position to be in.
So the school brought a person over. Colin's very smart, so with little effort, he was able to do the bare minimum that they asked. So he completed that, but
I'm sure that probably was, I can only imagine. He's probably feeling like, I don't even want to do this for you. Yeah, I don't care about this.
He repeatedly said, why did God keep me? Why I want to die. Why did he have to take my friends?
The
he
guilt.
was very, very upset that he lived, and didn't want to be. He didn't want to be there.
Well, I'm sure as a mom, though, you knew that the importance of him finishing that high school, because we're hoping as a mother that if we can get past this tragedy, that there'll be one foot in front of the other to go, and then to be able to build a life for himself. So I can see where the foundation of that education still has to be something that, even if we just have to push him through to get that diploma, I know that I'd be the same way. Let's do it whatever we got to do to get that diploma, because you still have a life that's going to be waiting for you.
Yeah, and I just kept trying to tell him, Colin, this was an accident.
Yeah.
This was a total accident. And quite frankly, since the accident, going off subject, I have a real trigger with going down 2-lane roads with double lines.
Oh, sure.
It happens a lot. And people pass me, and I watch people pass. And that's kind of my thing that grinds me the most is, people do this every day. Every day people pass on a double line, and there's no repercussions. It's just they did it there, and they go on the road, and they don't even really think about, oh, I just passed
They're
on a
on
double
automatic
line.
pilot. Yeah.
It's just something that people do and don't even think about. And then, of course, this time with Colin, that mistake of doing that cost, 3 boys' lives.
It's the inexperienced driver and we're out with our friends. All parents worry about this, but we also know that we have to let them out to be able to experience life in order to get the life experience to become better. And so that's where I was saying this is every parent's fear of just the simple, normal rite of passage of having friends in your vehicle and going somewhere, and how it completely forever changed everybody's life.
Well, that's, another point that both mothers, Lynn and Haley, they both said it could have been any one of those boys driving in that core group of friends. So they were so gracious and kind because, you know, I don't, it was so hard as it was that if they had not been that kind, I don't know how I could have gotten through it. I mean,
You probably weren't prepared for that
it,
kindness.
no, but they were my friends. Just as the boys were friends, these were my friends. And, I couldn't, it was so hard for me to divide my brain to support my son, but also be conscious of the other two families because I knew how much it hurt him. And I knew that that's all he could think about.
Yeah.
And
what an impossible position to be in.
He just always was like, he talking about Tanner, talking about Nathan. He just talked about him, and the last time that I had this, I was with Tanner, and it just was on his heart 24/7. And so he had to go on the ankle monitor. He
As
had
part of his required punishment was he was
they charged him. He had to go in. So we hired
as a senior in high school.
Yeah.
He's wearing an ankle monitor.
Yeah. And so he has things he has to attend, like counseling and checking in with, your parole officer and
probation officer at that point.
Yeah, I think I may be wrong, but I know he had one.
Had he served time?
No, he hasn't even. So we're preparing our case.
Preparing the case
but he, was.
So he's in pre-trial.
Yes. So
on an ankle monitor.
Yes. So, I remember just being so surprised when one of the counselors or one of his required meetings said, because they had to read the meter, they had to go in and have the ankle monitor looked at and stuff, and said, now since he's on, in-house arrest, don't even stop by McDonald's, because if someone sees him in a car, they'll think, what's he doing out? And I'm just like, wow, that he is such a terrible criminal.
He's such a menace to society that he can't even go through a McDonald's drive-through.
For instance, like he shouldn't be out doing anything. And I was like, wow, if you do that, then, you'll have to let us know how much time, because they monitor where you've been to how much time it takes you to get home, and so, Colin was having to do a lot of things, with his, probation and trying to go to counseling, which he wasn't receptive to. He just was completely down on himself. I watched him just, I watched him just not care about his hair anymore. Didn't care the way he dressed. Self-medicating. Smart enough to know how to kind of time a drop, although they were not all clean. So we get to the trial. We get to his trial and his sentencing, and they are two different things. I think this is where I get fuzzy and don't remember. But so anyway, we went to the trial, or it must have been the sentencing. And so you hear the victims' impact statements. And so Haley went, which is Tanner's mom, and Tanner's dad, CJ, went, and Russ went, Nathan's father. And both of them were kind of like, both of the men were kind of like they didn't. This is where, it's their point of view, and I can't fault them for being angry, but they just kept saying, to the judge, you make your decision of what you think is right. Not saying it themselves, but saying you do
They were
what you
leaving it
think
to
is
the
right.
judge.
Yeah. So I went, and man, did I really I really wrote my heart out in that. And I just let them know who Colin was and that this was a mistake. And he's paying for this with his emotional, mental health, and to have mercy on him for the judgment or for the sentencing, because he's a shell of a person. I mean, he was this bright, he was just, and now he's, walking around.
He's carrying the weight of the world.
He's carrying the weight of the world, which I can, you put yourself in his place. Everybody's been 18. Everybody's had their best friends, and,
and I don't know of any of us that probably wouldn't feel what he was going through.
Yeah. I mean,
we can empathize with what that must have been like to carry that.
Yeah. And in addition to that, he's an addict. So,
was that ever addressed in the court? Was that ever brought up?
No. But it affected, his recovery.
Sure it did.
And with what he wants to get away from, as a mother, my heart was breaking because he just couldn't, he would moan, he would scream, he had nightmares. He was self-medicating, and I was unable to be with him 24/7. So I saw him, high, or whatever you call it, on drugs, and
under the influence.
Yeah, and so I saw it, and it was just killing me, because I didn't know how to help. I just, my heart hurt for him, and I knew he was trying to get away from,
it's a very helpless feeling when our children are under the influence for whatever reason they choose, or are triggered by, or whatever leads them in that direction. But seeing your child under the influence, and it's a very bag of mixed feelings. I can remember being angry and being sad and wanting to go into this parenting mode of, what can I do to stop this? What can we do to change this? What do you need? I need to go save my child, because we are designed and wired to love and care and cherish and save and protect our children. So those are the natural instincts. that kick in.
Mm-hmm.
And let's throw another layer of the traumatic event of what he survived and the survivor guilt that he was experiencing. I can not I can't sit here and say I can understand that, but I can imagine how horrible that must have felt, not only him, but you as the mother. It was probably a pretty helpless feeling.
I want to go back to the impact statements.
Okay.
Because when I was finished, Colin wanted to go.
Oof.
So he was an experienced debater. He's very smart.
So public speaking was comfortable for him.
Yes, he had done a lot of public speaking. So what my son did was we all went up and sat in the chair, but Colin took the podium and he turned it towards the people sitting there. I don't want to say audience, but the people that are in
sitting
the courtroom, which was the parents.
Yeah.
So Colin turns the podium around to face the parents, and he starts addressing each parent. And he said, "Haley, I'm so sorry I took Tanner from you. He was my brother, and I loved him, and this is when I met him, and this is what we like to do. And I'm so sorry that I took Tanner from you." And then he went to Lynn, and he said, "Lynn and Russ, I'm so sorry I took Nathan from you. I loved him. He was my brother. This is when we met. This is what we like to do together. I'm really going to miss him." And then he sat down and put his head down on the table. And that's when I was told that they were going to take him, because he was sentenced to 4 months in a prison as long as he obeyed. And then if he violated that, he would have to go in for like 14 years. So his attorney had arranged for Colin to delay going to prison until the first of the year. So he had like 3 weeks before he had to go to prison, which was over the holiday, which wasn't much of a holiday. But anyway, so we took him to the Jackson County jail, and I knew that he was being strip searched and all the things. He was 18, and so you have to wait a little bit till you know where they go. And so anyway, he had to go to prison, and
I have to stop you right there. I want to circle back to a child who graduates high school at home because he can't finish school, and then a child who has to stand in a courtroom and apologize for causing the death of his friends, and ends up going into jail, receives a sentence, and enters into the Department of Corrections at 18, when just 6 months prior, probably, he was playing soccer. The contrast between those two is so incredibly different. And to think of what took place to get from the soccer field to walking into the Department of Corrections. The story that lies between those two places. So people think that they couldn't imagine their lives going from being a senior in high school to going to prison, or going to work one day to end up in prison. People think that they don't understand how that can happen. And I think it was important for us to explain anybody can end up in that situation. So when we talk about addiction, we need to also understand not everybody who begins to use plans for it to end up the way it ends up at, whether it's in prison, whether you're in trouble, or whether it happens worse. So I just wanted to give us a pause and think about that for a second. That emotional roller coaster from being a child and being in school and friends, and even if you're experimenting and trying to discover who you are, going from that environment to now walking into the Department of Corrections where there's no separation between you and somebody who may have murdered or have done hardened criminal activities. And that had to have been tough on you.
Yeah. He, like I said, he is a pretty, I don't know what he was like in prison, but he definitely bonds with people. And so he really bonded with his cellmates. And, he was the young one. So they all kind of took him under their wing and protected him. And so I got used to the procedures to go to the prison and visit him.
Which prison was he in?
He was in St. Joseph. It was
Reception and diagnostics.
well, I think he started there, and then they have to put you somewhere. And it was in St. Joseph. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it, but so I got used to visiting him there, which was really hard. To see your son walk in with the clogs and the outfit, waiting to see him at a table, getting him all the items from the vending machines, and just trying to treat him as much as possible, because your heart
Sure.
is breaking for them, for having to be in prison for an accident that absolutely has tortured you. I mean, it's like, I understand there's repercussions for that mistake, but believe me, he lost his sanity. And so when he got out of prison, he came to live with me. He's lived with me his entire life. And
Did you notice any changes once he came home?
um trying to remember. I he used to he talked about prison all the time, about about what they would eat and what they would trade and what they would buy. And you know he would write me, he would call me. um but when he got out, I guess I expected to see more change, but I know 4 months is not that long, but for an 18-year-old, it's enough to understand, you know,
I don't want to go back.
yeah, I mean, like, the lockdowns and, all the stuff, and, just the letters that he would write, which I can't bear to read. Um, but anyway, so he got out, and he did go back to using, self-medicating. He self-loathed himself. He just, it was horrible to see him strung out. Um, I would have to go to work, and I would just worry sick about him. Where is he? What's he doing? Even if he was at our house, that's probably where he did most of his drugs, was at our house, in the garage or in the basement. I had taken the lock off of his door in his bedroom. Um, and, you know,
You're not getting much work done, are you?
I,
You're really spending a lot of time consumed with, and I can say that because I've been in the same space.
the worry, I mean, even if he was, even with, and he was in our own home, I didn't feel that he was safe unless I could see him.
Yeah.
If you're sitting in front of me, I know you're not doing anything. But if you're in the garage, I mean, I can't just go down and sit in the garage. I can't, I would tell him he has to keep his bedroom door open. Um, but so he was self-medicating, and it was bad. And I forced him to go to Valley Hope. I said, you either go to Valley Hope or you get out of the house.
Valley Hope is a rehab facility in Boonville.
He went to Atchison.
Did he go to, okay, went to
Yes.
Atchison, Kansas.
Yes.
Okay.
So I just said, I'm not telling you you have to quit, but if you want to quit, if you don't want to quit, then you have to go somewhere. You either have to leave this house or go to Valley Hope. I've already called and got the arrangements. So,
So you gave him the ultimatum
I
that
did.
you go or you're out.
Right. And my heart was breaking because if he chose out, I mean, he was not only an addict, but he was brokenhearted. I just the mercy and the guilt and the grace that I had for him for his situation, I just couldn't pull hammers down on him all the time because, although I did, not condone anything, my heart was broken for him.
Yeah.
So he did go, and he went to Valley Hope. I visited him every weekend, and I thought he did as well as he could. But as soon as he got home, he wanted a beer.
Wow.
And I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to have a beer. He goes, it's not drugs. You know how they do.
Oh, yeah.
They
Yeah.
it's not this.
Stephen bargained with me
Oh
too.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm like,
Well, at least it's not heroin, Mom. I can drink a beer. I don't have a problem with alcohol.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm just like,
And that it's already it's the first step to breaking your heart again.
yeah. So
Because okay, well you haven't understood the concept of addiction then.
I'm sure he understood it, but he needed relief from, the mental, guilt of, and so I try to,
He wanted to escape what it was that he was struggling with.
oh yeah.
Mhm.
And I try to put myself in his shoes, and I'm like, I can understand how you would want to escape this hell in your head. I really get it. But I don't have that. And so it's not, that's what I want people to know. I didn't earn anything to not have addiction. I just simply don't have it. And luckily, but the unfortunate people that have trauma, the genetic gene, and mental illness, those are the ones that are stuck with addiction. That is like everything goes out the window. When I went to different groups, they would say every time with their family in front of them, their kids or their wives or whoever's there, in your addiction, you will pick the drugs over anything. Your family, your children. It's like, and see, I can't understand it because I don't have it.
And it's funny you say this because I'm going to take this minute and I'm going to explain something that I couldn't understand either. I have had trauma in my life. I lost my father at 6. I've had different stages in my life, but still I hadn't ever been afflicted with addiction. And I couldn't understand Stevens. I couldn't understand it. Just quit. Just stop. All of the crazy, unre- unrealistic expectation that we were placing on him. And after Stephen passed away, I was given Xanax. I'd never had any medications like that in my life, and I had taken it I maybe 3 or 4 times. And I then realized, 4 or 5 days into taking this, oh, I like this. And I thought, why do I want to take this? Why all of a sudden do I know exactly where that Xanax is? And I cannot wait until this evening so I can take that Xanax. And then it hit me, it dawned on me. Ooh, I've now got just the amount of trauma that's triggered that in me. That now I'm desiring this substance that makes me go to sleep, makes me
Take away
okay,
that
takes away that hurt in my
that
heart.
pound.
Yes. I had to get up and take it out of the cabinet and go hand it to my husband and say, get this out of the house. I don't know what's going on, but I'm wanting this more than I'm wanting to work through my trauma. So for the first time in my life, I was able to kind of now understand where he was coming from. And everyone's layer of trauma is different. Somebody's trauma that triggers that in them, it could happen with just a small amount of trauma, or somebody who's got layers and layers of trauma and they've finally reached that last layer of trauma that connected, that opened up the gene to addiction. I'm aware of that urge, but I've had the lived experience enough that I think I recognized it very quick. But think about it. If you're Colin's age and you don't know that, but you're leaning into the relief of it. You're leaning into the relief of it, but you don't have any lived experience, so you don't recognize it. And before you know it, it's grabbed a hold of you, and you're in now.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take us that
No,
direction.
I forgot. Oh, so he wanted to have a beer as soon as he got home.
Yeah.
So sobriety didn't last long after Valley Hope, and more of the same of the self-medicating. He always wanted to work, and he always did. He was a hard worker. And, so I was supposed to be in charge of his paycheck when he got it and, pay back, the loans and stuff. And, one of the funnier things, and just shows our relationship with Colin, he would have to borrow money before he'd get his paycheck or something. And so I would give him, I don't know, $10, $20 or whatever. And so he'd get paid and I'd say, okay, you owe me $20. And he goes, I already paid you that. And I said, no, you didn't. And he goes, yeah, I did. And I said, Colin, do you really think I would try to take $20 from you?
Yeah.
And he goes, you're right, Mom. I would trust you with anything I have.
Right.
So anyway, that was the life. He was self-medicating, going to work, went through a few different jobs. We were talking about Colin and his self-medicating, and it was just, he was functional, when he went to work, but then when he got home and all the free time, just constantly worrying.
What type of work was he doing?
He worked for heating and air once.
HVAC. Okay.
HVAC, and then he lost that job because of addiction. He did worked at Federal Express. He did restaurant work. He worked at Pepper Jack's. He worked at the Hy-Vee gas. And sometimes during that time, he was riding a bicycle because he didn't have his driver's license. So since, he didn't have a car for his graduation, his dad and I bought him a electrical bike. And he rode that to several of his jobs, which worried me being out late on a
Oh,
bicycle,
sure.
But anyway, his struggle with addiction was getting bad. He was, I don't know, I'm sure he was doing, multitude of things, but heroin was normally what he was shooting up. And
So he went from smoking to shooting it up.
yes, um,
How
I
did you discover that?
well, when he would be gone, and I would be suspicious, I would get on a ladder, and he had like a little ledge in his room, and I'd get on the ladder, and that's where he hid, you know, his needles or his alcohol or whatever it was. And so what I would do is I would throw it all down on the floor
Mm-hmm.
and let him see it when he got home to know that I know that,
Yeah.
So then
And I'm
when
sure I'm visualizing. I was the same way, and I was pretty angry about it.
oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. Well,
y-
yeah. You're not going to hide it from me. Let's take a look at it. That's it right there.
yeah, you have you're just so angry because I don't understand the mentality brain that they're dealing with. And
Well,
so all I can do is
the
be
self
angry.
destruction.
And, I've learned to realize that they don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
They
You're right.
don't want to be like that. And, I witnessed several times after he knew that, I saw him that way. He'd go, Mom, I don't want to be this way. Mom, I don't want to be this way. But I don't know how to live without it. I don't know if I can live without it. And he truly was just like, I don't know how I would survive without it because it's so part of his being. And but he was ashamed. And that's when, the empathy, would come in, but not to say I still didn't get angry with him because I did. And we would have, arguments um, and then the worry, just, when he wouldn't answer the phone, and you just try and text and call, and you're just imagining the worst.
Yeah. The imagination
Oh,
for me was the same way. The imagination was so much worse than the reality, but yet was it? Because there were times that it was.
well, I got so bad that, I was seeking counseling.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to the doctor, and I was prescribed anxiety medicine. And, I would be with a friend because I was so upset. And they would try to call Colin to get him back home because they wanted to know that they wanted Colin to know that his mom was freaking out because of his behavior.
Yeah.
And he would come home and go, "What?" Like, what are you freaking out about?
Right.
You just
Right.
want
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
But then you're glad to see them that they were concerned that to show up for you.
I was even sneakier. I was checking. I had it where I could see where his phone was at, and I knew that if his phone was moving, then the likelihood of nothing, him not being harmed was, yeah. I mean, the levels that we do as a parent to ease our own anxieties. Yeah.
I would be at work, and I would call him and he wouldn't answer, and so I couldn't work anymore. So I'd go, I got to go. So I'd have to come home, and I'm saying all the way home, what if he's dead? What if he's dead?
Yeah.
What if he's dead? How am I going to handle it if I walk in and see him dead? And then I would get home, and then he'd be laying in bed, and then I would like yell at him because why haven't you answered your phone? And he's like, what?
Right.
And you just like, I came home from work because you didn't answer your phone. Just that worry.
Yeah.
And
And then it turned instantly into anger because the irresponsibility of not answering the phone, the disrespect of having the ability to work you up by not answering a phone when they knew that if they weren't answering their phone, you were going to be worried. Yeah, it's a little mind game that whether it was intentional or not, we lived in that.
No, horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I insisted that he go to rehab again. Again, you either go to rehab or you get out.
Right.
So he wasn't very willing. But I took him to
So he
another
always
place.
chose to go to rehab, though,
Yeah,
instead of getting out.
yeah. And this one was expensive. This one was no insurance. And what I forgot to say is, and this was a big deal. I'm sorry to move around here,
That's all right.
but when he went to Valley Hope, it was timed so that he would be in rehab while I took a vacation with my family.
I've done the same thing.
And so I'm like, he'll be safe while I'm gone.
Yeah.
And I said, before he went, can he stay, as long as he needs to? And they said, yes, as long as it's medically necessary, he can stay. So I'm like, good. That really eased my mind. So when I was on my trip, I got a call from Colin. He said, Mom, they said my insurance is up. And I go, what? It was 2 weeks in. I was in Mackinac Island. He's in Atchison, Kansas. I said, how can they say that insurance is up? And he goes, Mom, I'm not ready to come home. And I'm like, well, I know you're not ready. But that made me feel good that he knew
He knew he
wasn't,
needed more time.
he needed more time. So I said, well, Colin, you got to stay. We'll just pay. Whatever the insurance doesn't pay, we'll pay. So anyway, that was just another problem with, I think, the rehab world is everyone is different. Recovery isn't the same for everybody.
But there's an
Different
insurance
time.
model sitting out there that determines whether or not your loved one is cured.
Well, medically necessary, meaning he doesn't need overnight inpatient care anymore. But when your home is, 3 hours away, how do you take away their inpatient?
Right.
Where do you want him to go for, he needed to be there.
Yeah.
He wasn't ready to be out. But that is,
I mean, when I say cure, I didn't mean like, you're fixed. I mean, you bring them into it. They didn't become an addict in 2 weeks.
Nope.
You're not even gonna put
Touch
a
the
drop
surface.
in the bucket in 2 weeks.
Right.
You're just barely they're not even got it all out of their system yet in 2 weeks. So we could make an entire podcast just on that subject alone, because nobody's getting any true service when insurance are the ones making the decisions.
Yeah. So anyway, he stayed. As soon as I got back, I let him stay 30 days and picked him up. But again, going back to that, when he came home, he wanted a beer. That's the stint there.
Yeah.
So now we're on to about a year later, and I've asked him to go to rehab again. And I made the mistake of, didn't know it was a mistake, but I put him in a high dollar place in Kansas City. And he went, and when he went in, he had a needle in his pocket.
Well, before we go into that story, let me explain to you. I don't know how a parent is supposed to know what is an effective rehab program. I don't know how we're supposed to know which one we should pick. Again, you're either paying out of pocket or you're being dictated to by an insurance company that says we'll pay for him to go here. And
For
that's
this
what,
long.
right. And that's the decision factor. Instead of, look at the patient. What does the client need? What are the services that would be best for them? It's so dysfunctional. Rehabilitation for substance use disorder is barbaric on how they expect somebody to actually walk out of there with any kind of recovery. And I'm not going to say that people don't find recovery. They do. I'm not trying to say it's ineffective. But the large majority of people are not receiving the services that they need. And it takes somebody that probably has been a round or two in rehabs to start advocating for exactly what they need. Because I don't know if anybody knows what they need the first time or two going through rehab.
Yeah. Well, each person is individual, has different mental health issues, different medical issues, different traumas. So, it's just not one size does not fit all.
No, not at all.
And you have to treat each individual. There's of course education that they need, and they need the sobriety, but they need more than that. And so I'm taking him to his third rehab. I believe it was in December because he was there over Christmas. And it was local. It was in Kansas City. And I get the dreaded phone call that he's being kicked out of rehab for breaking the rules. Had a friend drive out and give him something. So, I go to pick him up. And this next issue is probably one of the sadder things that happened. He told me that he had been in contact with an old boss of his, and that he was now going to be his sponsor. And so this sponsor, came to the house, and he was caring for his wife or girlfriend's child. So it was the two of them. And, I thought he was trying to help Colin, and I trusted him. And I was so appreciative that I bought things for them and gave them money. And Colin, he's like, have him come stay with me, get him out of your hair. I'll take him. And, I just thought, okay, this is good. But they both got caught stealing trinkets, lip balm, or, something stupid.
So this person who's going to be a mentor to him was indulging in the behavior that
he was an addict too.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say.
Yeah, he was. Lie through their teeth.
So it was a ruse to make you believe that he was in safe hands.
Yes. So I get a call that they're both in jail. And he goes, Mom, you got to get us out, because his friend has got to pick his son up from school. So if I don't,
how the hell is that your problem?
And I wanted,
you took my son.
Yeah.
And you went and did illegal behavior, and you probably supplied to my son, but we're supposed to worry about his son. Yeah.
So, sucker, I go and bail them both out. So, anyway, things just aren't going well. So I'm really scared for Colin, and I reach out to his dad, and I said, you know, he's got to get out of Lee Summit. This just isn't safe for him. And, his dad lived, out of Lee Summit and said, well, let me take him. And it hurt like heck to release him because he's my baby.
Yeah.
But I knew I had to. So I let him go stay with his dad. So his dad,
Was his dad prepared for all of the nonsense that was going to be coming, that is surrounded by anybody who's struggling with addiction? It's I always call it the drama that follows them.
I I don't really think so, because his response was, in taking him, his wife was not working and she could have her eyes on him 24/7. And I said, well, you can keep him busy, but what about his addiction? And he said, we'll just, keep our eyes on him. So anyway, he went to his dad's. They got him a car. He got a job driving into Federal Express. Was doing really well. And so I missed him, and I would ask him if I could, buy him dinner before he went home after work. And it got well enough that, I asked if he could come home and visit me for a weekend. Well, unfortunately, when he did come home, he used.
Do you think he was ever using at his dad's?
I really don't think so. I really don't think so. And he overdosed, and I had to get a neighbor's help to knock down the bathroom door. And I laid there with him and rocked him in my arms and was trying to give him CPR. The neighbor called the ambulance. They came in. They pulled him out, and he needed 3 shots of Narcan. I had given him one that I had stashed away, and I had to find it, and it was old. So I did it. Nothing happened when the paramedics came. They did it twice, and he was revived. And they said, "Man, you got to go to the hospital." He's like, "No, no, no, I'm fine now. I'm fine." They're like, "You have to go." So went to the hospital, and he's sitting on the table, and I'm just calm. And he goes, "Mom, God saved me." I said, "Yes, he did, Colin. He saved you many times." We would talk about God occasionally. When he went to the crash site where the boys died, and he asked God to help him, and he felt. He said, "Mom," he woke me up in the middle of the night to tell me that he felt from the bottom of his head, from his feet to his head, he just felt a complete and utter peace after he asked God to help him. So he's reaching out, but he knows his behavior is not what it should be. But he was raised in the church, and so he had that bit to hold on to. And I remember asking him, which this is going to be hard for any mother to hear, but I said to him when he was in the depths of his addiction, I said, "Colin," I said, "I understand you wanting to escape all that you've been through. I understand you want to numb yourself. I get it. But what I don't get is how good is it to let it take the rest of your life? To get that feeling, you have to give up everything. You have to give up everything in your life to get that high. So What is it? What makes you feel? What is worth all that? Give up your entire life for drugs. And I did not like the answer that I got. He said, Mom, I'm afraid I will never feel this way again if I give up drugs. And I said, what is that feeling? He said, it's like being hugged by God.
Ooh.
And I just tried to swallow that. And I'm like, that's the pinnacle of comfort. And how can I give that up?
How do you compete with that?
I was like, oh, it was just like, I was speechless, and I
Yeah.
never forgot it. I never forgot it. And that's what made me.
And very few people afflicted by this probably could articulate it quite like that. So what an open and honest dialogue that you had with him, that he was able to articulate the highest level of comfort that he ever received was probably in that state. That very few people may be even able to articulate that, but to relate this euphoric feeling that you receive from the drugs to the euphoric feeling that you have when you have that highest of all connection with the higher power. That is powerful.
It was, and it scared me so badly that, it's like, um it was like a game changer for me. It was like, now what do I do? um
I think as a parent of an addict, I think we all probably experience that. I know for me that's profound what you just described. But I think most of us have an experience with our loved one where we realize how much of a grab that the drugs have on our children. For me, it was not as profound. In fact, it was gritty. It was I walked in and caught my son getting high, and he didn't see me there, and he was struggling to get high, and the look on his face of frustration. And then when he finally, you know, received the euphoric feeling and I watched it come over him, I was defeated, utterly defeated, because I knew whatever I had to offer him or recovery had to offer him probably was never going to break through that. I had, for the first time in my entire 25 years of chasing him through addiction, I realized that was a monkey on his back that I was never going to be able to pull off. I was never going, there was a defeated feeling of all of my efforts and attention and love and want, and all of it wrapped all up together was just squashed in that one moment. So I'm sure that was very similar.
mhm. Yeah. So anyway, when it was time for Colin to go back to his dad's house from being at mine at the weekend where he had overdosed, I insisted that he tell his dad before he go home, because I just thought, I can't hide this. Under the rug. I wanted to, but I thought if it ever got out that I didn't make him share it with his dad, that his dad would be extremely angry with me. So I thought it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So, make a long story short, his dad told him he couldn't come back.
Oh, man.
He said, nope, can't come back here. So I was completely so scared again because I'm like,
It's
it,
all put back on you.
well, it's like he's back in his playground.
Yeah.
And this is what happens when he comes back to his playground and he can get a hold of people.
Mm-hmm.
And it just scared me so bad. And I was mad because I knew,
Well, your safety net was gone too.
yeah, I was just like, so he he met a very special girl at work that he had a very strong connection to her and her family. And he was able to go over there and spend time with their family, which didn't know anything about, you know, the accident. And, in Lee Summit, it was very, everybody knew about that accident. It made the news. I mean, it was a big story.
Yeah.
I mean, um, his sentencing was on TV. So, he got to escape that a bit with this very lovely family. But anyway, he came home from work about midnight. I was mad at him because he wanted me to meet her family and have this little powwow and meet the girlfriend's family and everything. And I'm like, no, everything is not okay. I can't go to that meeting and pretend that, you
Mm-hmm.
know, oh, because I was mad at where he was at. He wasn't following the rules. And so,
He wanted to represent himself differently than what the reality was.
here's my mom, here's our family, and I'm inside internally just broken
Yeah.
and worried, and I can't represent. Here's my son, he
Right.
is a wonderful person,
Right.
but unfortunately,
We are we
addiction.
right. We're not a family affected by any of this when you actually are a family affected by all of it.
Yeah, it was hard for me to go to this meet and greet, knowing that I was so mad at him that he was not following the rules
Mm-hmm.
of his addiction, and checking in with me, and making me worry about him. And so that night he came home and he said, well, what's wrong with you? Because I didn't answer his texts and didn't respond. And I said, everything. And he just gives me this, like, oh, whatever look. And so I was mad that, we weren't going to talk about it the way, sometimes he's open to talking and sometimes he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, he wasn't. And I know why now. But so we weren't going to get to talk about it. So I went to my room and slammed the door, which normally I keep it open. The next morning, I got up and did my normal things. And I'm like, well, Colin should be getting up. It's time for him to go to work. So I knocked on his door, didn't answer. I opened the door, and Colin was laying on the floor with a needle beside him. So I get down on my knees. I really don't know. He was cold and hard to the touch, but I started to give him CPR, and I called for help. And so I just continued to rock him and rub his forehead and his hair, and just, he had a pile of water in his eyelids, and I got the water out of his eyelids. And um, paramedics came, and so they asked me to leave the room. And so the paramedic was in there, and then another police, or I don't know who the first one was, a fire department or paramedics, but they had another crew coming up. And I remember standing there waiting for them to acknowledge the other party, and the guy goes like that. And that is the moment I knew my son was really dead. And I went to mush. I started having screams and screeches come out of my body, and I couldn't control it. I could not control my body. I couldn't think. I couldn't talk. All I could do was make noises, and they were loud.
It was a guttural.
What?
It's just a guttural sound that we
Yeah,
make.
it's just,
It's primal.
it is. When you're watching TV and you see those scenes, I mean, it's like, no, that's not how it is.
No.
That is not correct. It is just like you no longer have control of your body, and things just come out of it, and you just start twitching, and you just start, it's just like, and so
It's a part of you that dies inside of you, and it's the noise that we make.
it was during COVID. It was August 22nd of 2020. And my family came, my sister and my mother and his father all came to the house. And they just took me. They took me to the hospital. And my sister tried to explain that she needed to come with me into the hospital. And they said no. And so they took me in, and they're like, trying to evaluate me. And they're like, what's wrong? And all I could do was, I mean, forgive me, but it's like, ah, just, and they're like, oh, she must be having a heart attack. I'm like, I'm just like a cave person.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't get the information from me because I just wasn't capable of having a conversation. So they went out and got my sister. And I was under a regimen of medicine. I was unable to participate in any of the planning of his celebration. I was not, I was not capable. And so.
Your grief was so profound that you were not able to participate in the planning of his funeral.
No. The one thing that I was able to do with my sister's help is I was able to choose a couple of songs. And the song that just seemed to scream at me was King and Country, God Only Knows.
Yeah.
And it
Beautiful
was
song.
like that's who Colin must have felt like he was. And if you know the lyrics to the song, it's very profound. That God only knows what he's gone through. God only knows what they think about you. And so when the song came on in his celebration, I was heavily medicated, but I was praising God with my arms in the air, just feeling the music, and just totally engulfed that, hoping anybody else sitting there that day could feel that song and feel a sense of God knows what you're going through. And then there was another song that I had, and I believe it was by Paul Stevenson, And um, it was another welcoming song that doesn't matter what you've done, you can go. And it was very spiritual for me because if I didn't have my faith,
Yeah.
and if I didn't know that my son was in heaven and that I would see him again, I couldn't bear it.
Well, I'm sure that that was the comfort that you were able to take in, is knowing that where he went was a better place,
That,
and that all was forgiven. And I can honestly say that I had a very similar feeling about it as well. Is that the pain was no longer there.
he struggled so hard that, the saying is, you know, um, God took him. God took him. I wasn't ready for it, but God took him. And after a retreat that I had gone to with bereaved parents, um, I really, really changed my verbiage to God saved him,
Yeah.
because I don't know if Colin would ever be able to get through a normal life with that trauma behind him. So God took him and saved him because, at least I know he's he doesn't want to come back. And
I just related to what you were just saying, because Stephen was the same way. He was never going to have a, a, a life that he wanted to live.
yes,
And I just, that caught me. That caught me. In fact, it gives me some comfort too, that where they're at now, they're at their full potential.
yes. And I see him before the addiction. I
Yeah,
see him in heaven, his full self again. And it makes me happy. And as a Christian, um, there's still a expectation that that is supposed to solve your grief.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
And it is a comfort. Believe me, it is
yeah.
my
It's a
comfort.
comfort, but
But
it
you
doesn't
still,
take away your
but
grief.
it's you still miss them.
Yeah,
You go from worrying about them to missing them.
yeah,
And my hope was always, if they're breathing, there's still hope.
yeah. Absolutely,
And so
absolutely.
I
I often say that I was always prepared for recovery to be around the corner for us. That I had never given up on the opportunity of recovery as what was around the corner waiting for him.
I always prayed to God, you know, the saying of he leaves the 99 to go after the one. And I said, leave me, God, leave me here and bring him back, bring him back. And so when he died, I, when I finally got, some brain waves, I was like, I had this false sense of security that, you know, God had saved him so many times that his story was going to take all of this situations and trauma in his life to speak for recovery, to say, look, if I can make it through this, you can too.
Absolutely.
And that's just where I'm like, God, come on, it's time. I don't want to, I'm done. Come on, let's
Right.
hurry this
And
up.
that's funny
Well,
because I've always felt the same way. I always said to Stephen, you've endured this because you're intended to go tell this story. You are intended to bring your story for helping others. And there was times he would lean into that, And he was like, yeah, I need to go, help others. And then there were times he just, he couldn't help others because he couldn't help
Help
himself.
himself. Right.
That's part of the reason why I do this podcast and do some of the advocate work that I do, is because that emptiness in my heart, and the hole in my life is now filled with taking that knowledge and that information and trying to help others.
One thing I wanted to say about Colin was, to show his heart. Um, the
Show me
parents,
show me his picture.
this is my baby. This was taken um, in 2018. It was taken for, it was a picture that was taken for his grandmother's 80th birthday.
Hold it up a little bit higher so make sure my camera can see it. There you go.
So this is my baby.
He was tall.
Well, I'm short.
He was taller than you.
Yes, but what I wanted to say was the parents of Tanner and Nathan got together and organized a preventative safe driving class to be given at the Kansas Speedway over in Kansas City, Kansas. And so they organized this it was a class to take for defensive driving.
Nice.
And so it was a pretty big deal. There were a lot of people that came. People came in and they asked Colin to speak to each of the classes. And again, he is a good speaker, but the subject matter is very tender.
Sure.
So his dad went to one of the days and I went to the other. So I got to see him speak twice, and um, he did a great job, and I was very proud of him. And it was hard. It was emotional. Um, he had also taken the driving thing, so he told him how, that could have prevented maybe his accident, to know a little bit more skills about, how he came back and overcorrected. So he was using that in the class and talking about his friends and, trying to get the kids to understand how important it is
How
because of
serious it is.
of what happened to him. And so it was emotional. And so this is another layer. But while Colin was in prison, I got breast cancer. And the reason I bring this up is because everybody at KU that was treating me for my cancer knew what I was going through and knew the trauma that I was going through. And so I was at a treatment, and the nurse said there was I don't know if it was, how they train people or they have people following along. And she said, "Do you mind if you can I tell her,
So it was a
what you're."
student.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or it was
Hmm.
it didn't no, it wasn't a student. They were older than that. But anyway, so, I just said, "Okay." So I started with the beginning of the car accident, and didn't get very far before this visitor said, "Did your son do uh some speaking at breaks at the speedway when they had the safe driving course?" And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "That young man speaking was your son?" I said, "Yes, that's my son, Colin." She's like, "Oh my gosh." She said, "My daughter and I were there, and he did such a great job." And my daughter and I talk about him to this day,
Wow.
of the impact that he had. And she said, "I told my daughter that day, I want to meet that boy's mother."
Wow.
And talk about proud.
Oh,
I was
absolutely.
so proud. So, I say these things because, he did things. And, I was waiting for him to do things later, but he did them
Right.
before.
Yeah,
And
he had an impact on this world.
so the last part of my story, with my son and his death and how do I deal with it, I became involved with a organization in Kansas City called the Healing House, and it's 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 grown so special in my heart because they're, in my opinion, have a whole different approach, and it's not based off of time. It's not based off of, you know, you know, they take each person individually, and they have structure, but it is such a large community that you just have support from so many people, and you're emerged into this
Mm-hmm.
community where everyone is so supportive. And I just fell in love with the organization and started volunteering. And they have separate houses, where the participants live in. They have men and women's houses. And I've known people, from classes that I've taken, of people that have gotten houses named after some of the children that they've lost. And I was like, wow, I would just love to have a Collins house. But I just didn't see how it was possible. And I thought, well, you know, someday when I die, I'll be able to, you know, I don't have, my son anymore. So what am I going to do?
Right. You don't have a legacy of someone to leave
Yes.
your assets to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, um, my mother passed away. And with that, I was able to tell Healing House I want to pursue a Collins house.
Oh, that's very beautiful.
So they started searching for houses, and usually they get them in pretty bad shape.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the northeastern part of Kansas City, Missouri. But they're in the area they need to be in because that's who they serve, is
Right.
those people.
Yep.
So a few houses fell through. It was a gut punch every time when they said, "Oh, it fell through." Till finally, I was called and said, "Jolene, I think we've found one," and uh, we were able to work it out with people selling it, and it was in pretty good shape. So move-in time was only 2 months from taking possession of it, and they had an open house that was absolutely glorious. Selena, you were
Yep.
there.
I was. I was honored to be a part of that.
And the house was beautiful. And my pastor from Church of the Resurrection came and blessed it. And 12 people live there. I've met the gentlemen that live in the house. Just recently had two of the people in the house get baptized in a big baptism for the year. And to know that two people in Colin's house were brought to the Lord, not necessarily because of Colin's house, but that's where they live. And the program brought them to the Lord. And I feel like I'm honoring my son, my God, and the people that need help. It just serves all my boxes. And so that my passion is to make people that don't understand addiction, to change the stigma that these are lovely people. People in Hollywood, people everywhere
Every walk of life.
have addiction, and they're not judged by a stigma. It's just that, they get a pass for some reason. I don't know why. But my son was a wonderful person. Stephen
Yeah.
had a heart of gold.
Yeah.
I know other people that have suffered, and they are not
They are
bad people.
so much more than their suffrage.
It is a
Yeah.
disease, and I am just lucky enough to not have it. And I am waiting for the day. And I've heard some talk about somehow helping with addiction to the brain, somehow studying the brain that has that. It's something that when you don't have it, you can't understand it.
Yeah.
But I don't judge them. I don't judge them by stigma because they don't want it. They didn't say, I sure would like to be an addict. They don't choose it, but they have to live with it, and then they're judged by it.
And there's a whole underbelly of the way everyone judges or makes the assumption that what a family should or shouldn't do, what a person is entitled to, person who's struggling with addiction, what they're entitled to, what they're not entitled to. I'm sure you've experienced it as well as I have, and I'm very public about trying to eliminate the theory of tough love, hitting rock bottom, or labeling the parent as the enabler. These are all concepts that are not based off of. I mean, these are theories. These are not factuals. We as parents are doing the best we can do to save our children because that is instinctive behavior of a parent. And then be told to ignore your instinctive behavior, that you're not being a responsible parent for following your instinctive behavior is insane to be telling us that. When reality is we need to love our children because they need to know they're cared about. And telling parents and people that let them hit rock bottom, well, I'm sure you would agree with me that rock bottom's death. So we let them hit death? No. Recovery doesn't come at rock bottom. Recovery comes in every step of this. It's possible for recovery in every step. We don't just stand back and wait for them to possibly die. It's too late. So I love what you share with your knowledge of Colin's story. I love how you cared about him all the way through, how you honor him today with the things that you share, with the experiences you had with him. I've gotten to know Colin through your eyes, the same as you've gotten to know Stephen through my eyes, because we're mothers that carry our children and share our stories. Sorry, I don't mean to get emotional. You're on a mission to share your story, and you make an impact every time you share your story of Colin. You make an impact on people to destigmatize what addiction was in your family, in most families. I do the same thing in many other platforms. But sitting down with you as a good friend, sitting here talking about Colin today and your story, we're going to help a lot of people with this. There's going to be a lot of people that listen to this podcast and they can relate because their story is similar to your story. Maybe their story is more similar to your story than it is to my story. That's the reason why we have to bring people on here and talk about it, is so that we can humanize what addiction has been for our families. We can humanize the people that are suffering and the people that we have lost, to make sure people understand they are not worthless throwaway human beings. They have a family that love them. They have something to contribute to society. And it's our job to sit down and have those conversations and share that with people.
Yeah, I am big on, even people, parents in general, or friends that, know someone with addiction, I am not ashamed to share Colin's story. It's not a secret to me that he was afflicted with addiction. I mean, if you don't have anybody, you are very lucky. But
Yeah.
if you start talking about it, you know someone. There is
Oh, yeah.
somewhere that, and my instant feeling is not stigma. It's, oh gosh, I know
Yeah.
what addiction does, and my heart sinks knowing that, someone or whoever it is suffering with this. And it's just, oh boy, do you know the road you're going to have to go down,
Right.
and my heart hurts for the addicts. I mean, it's just heartbreaking, and to be judged for something so ugly that they can't. People think it's a choice. Once you're addicted, it's no longer a
It's no longer a
choice.
choice.
It's not a choice anymore. It's they have to live. I mean, it's like a breath.
Right.
And their mind is saying this is all that you can think of, and since we can't understand it, we're going to judge them.
It's an instinctual
No.
drive that they can't turn off.
Yes.
It's a repetitive thought in their brain that they cannot shut off until they have used. And then once they become addicted to it, they're using to prevent themselves from being sick. At some point they use just to be normal. And that's when it's in such a cycle that they're in it and stuck in it until there can be intervening through recovery. I know for me, when Stephen was in his active addiction, I absolutely fell to the stigma, the shame, the guilt. I absolutely lived in that a fear of people finding out about what we were really dealing with. I was not honest with a lot of people about what we were living with and dealing with, mostly because I was ashamed and took that blame on myself. I didn't have the support of hearing people like you and me talking openly, unapologetic about what they had experienced. I didn't have that. So once Stephen passed away, I said nothing, hell and high water, was not going to stand in my way to speak and talk about it and live in my truth so that nobody else is isolated and alone as if same as what I was. I was going to be the safety net for someone else. And I'm sure you felt the same way, that I'm not going to walk around in shame and embarrassment any longer. I was going to talk about the truth, no matter how uncomfortable the truth may be, because the more we talk about it, the less uncomfortable it becomes.
Yes. 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 I was once asked a question.
Start back, as I was once asked a
I
question.
was once asked the question, what is your greatest wish? And I said, to take addiction, throw it in the Grand Canyon, and light a match.
Yeah. What an analogy. I love it.
And so I wait for the day and will, fight until addiction is addressed and looked at like a disease of anything else. And, for it to get, it's just ugly. And so people, would rather ignore it because it's ugly. Well, wait till you have to live it.
Right?
It's, you're thinking about it. We're living it.
We're living it. That's exactly. And
And
I do a lot of TikTok videos, and that's really kind of what my conversations are, is you're standing here and judging of something you haven't lived. And until you've lived it, you wouldn't understand it. And once you have lived it, you're not going to stand there and pass judgment on anybody else.
you want to help people
You want to
like
help
that.
them.
You want to help them because, it is not a disease that anyone chooses. And I am just lucky enough not to have it, because if I did, things would be much different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times we also forget that parents, especially, we endure the addiction. We suffer through the trauma of what that has done to us, and then we get to be victimized a second time in their death, because it's not a socially acceptable death. So there's a stigma behind that. Everyone tiptoes around it, doesn't acknowledge it, does a lot of talking about it. And if we were a family that lost our child to a childhood sickness or something that is socially acceptable, we have an entire community that would rally around us. But because it's addiction, nobody wants to come and hold our hands, because they don't want, for one, there's just such a stigma that they don't want to be associated with it. And two, they don't know what to say. Well, I'm just going to say this. You say the same thing. You say, I'm sorry for your loss. And you say, I'm praying for you. And you come sit in the quiet and the silence right alongside them, regardless of the cause of death.
And you talk about him.
And you talk about them.
Tell me about him.
Right.
Say his name.
Right. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable and they don't know what to say when you tell them, I've just lost my son. Here is a very safe thing to do. Can you tell me a little bit about him? That is a safe place, because that is a place of love that we always want to visit. And we're never put off, and we're never taken back. The one thing, I'm sure you've got some of these, but the one thing I hate having somebody say is to tell me he's in a better place, or to tell me that God needed him. All those may be true, but it still is a hit to my heart to have somebody say that to me. So when I come across somebody that says, I'm so sorry for your loss, I bet he was an amazing person, that makes my day. Because there was no judgment. They were just simply saying what I felt in my heart. I'm sure he was a great person.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
I have to say, I was excited to sit down with you and talk to you, even though I've heard your story. And it's been an honor to be your friend, because I don't have very many friends that have lost children. I'm grateful. I don't think we're supposed to have a lot of friends that have lost children, but the ones that we have a kindred spirit of understanding each other. And so sitting down today and telling Colin's story through your eyes and listening to you describe how you've endured and survived and continue to do amazing things, I was honored to sit here and share this hour and 2 hours with you.
Well, thank you. And I want to say that, I am in awe of you. I mean, you are get her done rock star. And she is, I mean, you've helped me numerous times. You helped me with, the verbiage of what I wanted to put on, the letter for Colin's opening of his house, and, just, sharing these, similarities, and understanding addiction, that you don't have to tiptoe around, nothing shocks us,
No.
You've been through more, definitely, as far as, with the extent of
I got
injury.
drugged through the trenches.
Well, yeah. I never had to pull him out of a trap house because he was always at home.
Right.
But not to say that I wouldn't have.
Right. You would have.
I had to take him somewhere to buy not legal Suboxone, because he was didn't have any more.
Yeah. Keep him from being sick.
Yep. I drove him there.
Yep.
But you are just a driven person. You understand, and you are a fighter for the cause. And
Yeah. Thank you.
I am very glad
I put
that
this
you're my
much
friend.
energy. I put this much energy into Stephen when he was alive. So why wouldn't I put this much energy into prevention, put this much energy into educating the general public of what us mothers have experienced, the life experience of loving a child with addiction. You know, that empty hole in my heart, I'll fill it with that. That makes me feel like I'm doing something that matters.
Mm-hmm. And it is.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys, thank you so much for listening today. And again, honored to sit here with Jolene. You know, please like, share, support. Jolene, is there any social media you want to share with anybody, or is there you want to encourage them to go to the Healing House website, check out the Healing House? Jolene donated a house to Healing House, and it is Colin's house. And that is a house that is in the recovery program there for gentlemen that have been in the program for...
And it is advanced house.
It's an advanced house as well. And I know Jolene once told me that Colin would have really enjoyed living in a house like that. So I know that that brings her great comfort in knowing that she has provided something that would have really benefited Colin. So we're going to end today on that note. And so thank you guys for joining us. And again, like, click, share, and follow along. And you guys, thank you for being here today.